Well, good morning. We are continuing our series on being better in 2016. We want to be better, right? My goal always is to be better. I want to be better than I was before. I want to be better this year than I was last year. I want to be better 10 years from now than I am today. I want to be a better pastor. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I'd like to be a better golfer, but we've kind of put that on the back burner for a while, all right? But we want to be better, right? We want to be better. And today we talked about several things and promised that one of the things that we talk about is something that everybody thinks about as they think about their goals and their hopes for the future, and that is money, right? And now you may not like to talk about money at church, and I promise you there's not a lot of pastors, all right, who pastor a church week in and week out who really love to get up and talk about money. There's some on TV that love to talk about money. I'm a little worried about them. But most pastors don't like to talk about money too much because they know it's sensitive, right? Money is a personal thing for some folks. They don't really talk about what they make or what's going on with their money or how they spend their money. That's my business. That's what goes on with me. But there are, by some accounts, over 2,000 verses in the Bible about money. Now, I didn't go through and count. I'm sort of trusting what I read on the internet. But I know that they're not all directly about money. They are, some of them, about how we make our living or how we deal with the wealth that we have. But there is a lot of instruction in the Bible about how we handle the stuff God's given us, whether that's money or possessions, all right? And so what we're going to do today is be very practical about being better with money. Because as you think about your goals and your hopes and your dreams for the future, and specifically about money, you want what? More money, right? Everybody wants more, right? How much is too much money? Have you ever known anybody who thought they were rich? I've known people with a lot and people with a little. Nobody. I've never met anybody who thought they were rich, right? Thought they had enough. Everybody wants more, right? Maybe part of your goals is that you would increase your income for the next year. Maybe part of your goals is that you would reduce your debt, all right? Maybe it's just that you would get your spending in line, or maybe it's just that you would sort of this year you'd figure out what it is, what's going on with your money, right? You feel out of control. You feel like we talked about last week, like life is just happening to you. It's just rolling over you, right? And so, anyway, today what we're going to do is we're going to talk some very practical things about money. But before we get into this practical instruction, I just want to remind you that this ultimately is not about money, all right? Everything that we do in our life needs to be through the lens or seen through the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have been saved by the power of God. We are His children, and we are living a new life for Him. And as we said before, our life is not our own. We were bought with a price, and so now we glorify God in everything that we do, and that includes our money. But money is not the object. Money is not the thing to be worshipped, right? We're reminded that in the Bible, in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, that those who love money will never have enough, right? That's what I talked about just a minute ago. How meaningless to think that wealth brings true happiness. We know that we do not find our joy, we do not find our happiness, we do not find our fulfillment in the things that we have or the money in our pocket. Although when you do have a little money in your pocket, you just feel a little better, right? On payday, you just feel, you can't help that having that gives you some security or gives you some joy, right? But it cannot be our ultimate source of happiness because it will always be a wanting more, right? We'll never have enough if that's your ultimate source of joy. In Matthew, we have this from Jesus who says, "No one can serve two masters." No one can serve two masters. For you will hate the one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So we make very clear as we start into this very practical talk about money that money is not the object here. Money is not the goal, but our relationship with Jesus, our relationship with our Father God is our ultimate goal, that would be closer, and that everything that we do in life would reflect that all right, it would be colored by that. It would be changed by our relationship with Jesus. Now, I've never been all that great with money. I've always taken the attitude that you just spend what you got, right? All right, and so I've never been that great with it. I have to have some teaching and some instruction. So we're going to get some help this morning on money. Somebody who's a little bit better with it than I am. And so I'm going to ask John Doan to come on up here. John, where are you? Where's John? There he is. Y'all give John a hand. John, come on up, bud. How are you? Good to see you this morning. Welcome, welcome. All right. There you go. Well, now, if you don't know John, John is one of our elders here at the church, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But now, John, I tell you what, instead of me introducing you to everybody, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
All right. My name's John Doan. Me and my wife, she works in the kids. Her name's Lynn. We moved here in 1997. And started working at TSYS. We came from South Carolina. I got a job at TSYS, so I've been there ever since then. We've got 5 children. And when we moved here, we only had 2, and she was pregnant with the 3rd, Michaela. And I felt kind of bad when we came here because we moved here in September, and she was due in November. So she had to find a new OBGYN real quick and get comfortable with that, so I felt kind of bad about that. But it all worked out, and we've got 4 girls and 1 boy.
You know all their names?
I think I know their names. Let's see, Kaylee is 14, Carrie is 16, Michaela is 18.
Showing off with the ages.
Clark is 20, and Kelsey's 22.
All right.
So.
All right, good deal, and good kids. They're all a lot of fun. Carrie plays piano here. All right, you see Carrie every week playing the piano, and they're all really great kids, as far as I know.
As far as I know, too.
Okay, all right.
They got me fooled otherwise. So.
Now, so tell us about your role here at the church. Tell us about your involvement, how long you've been here at the church, and what you do here at the church.
Well, Lynn and I started coming to theFort. It's several years. Can't really count the years, but it was when we were at Mount Olive Elementary is when we started coming there, and that's when we first got involved serving and just doing different things. We've been in other churches and served, and we always knew we would serve, but we always seemed to be more geared towards working with kids, mainly because I followed my wife around. She always worked with the kids, and I wanted to be around her, so we worked with the kids a lot. And then as we transitioned to different buildings and then ended up here and started being a deacon and being an elder, things presented themselves in such a way that they needed somebody to start running the numbers again and just keeping up with, money in, money out, making sure things were paid and that we weren't spending more money than what came in. So people said they thought I was pretty good at that, so they asked me to do it. And I didn't really volunteer for it at all, but I did feel like that was what I was suited for. And that's what I've been doing probably for maybe about a year now, a little over a year, I think, been involved with that. So.
All right. Now, John is one of the elders here, and if you're not familiar with how our church works, we have 7 elders who are basically help to make the decisions for the church body. All right, and so when something needs doing around here, when something needs fixed or something needs to be taken care of, the elders are the ones that take care of that. It's a very important position here at the church. There's a lot of responsibility to it. It's not something you step into lightly, and it's not something we ask somebody to do lightly. It's a big deal. And the men who I am so thankful, and one of the big reasons that I'm here is that the men who serve you in that capacity are great men. I mean, they're humble, love the Lord, love their families, and love you, and have really given their lives to serve in this church. And so John's one of those. And the big thing that he does, like he says, is I guess we call him treasurer, maybe the best description for what he does. He said running the numbers. I think that might mean a little something different where you come from. But John does a great job with it, and he's got a natural bent to that thing, to the numbers and to helping us out with the money. And really, if you ask around, we are in the stable financial position. A lot of people would give a lot of credit to John for that, for really knowing where we are. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But now, John, when it comes to money, I brought you up here as our money expert. All right.
Okay.
All right. So, somebody who knows how to handle money. So when it comes to money, what are the most important things? And we were talking about practical stuff this morning. So if we talk to our congregation, our people, about what are the most important things that you need to do when it comes to money, what are some of those things?
Well, one of the things that I think of, and just to piggyback, and you say I'm an expert. I'm not an expert, but I think we do pretty good. One of the most important things that comes to my mind is communication. You and your spouse, if you're married, you need to be on the same page. If you're not married, you need to be able to communicate with yourself, if you will, know how much money you have, know what money's going out. I would think the second thing would be to have a budget. You have to know how much money you have before you know how much money to spend. And that's something you work together on with your spouse if you're married. Every month you need to come together and look at, here's how much money I have coming in. And these are the things that we have going on this month that we have to pay. If it's the mortgage, the car payment, the utility bills, the kids got something going on at school or playing soccer. Every month you need to sit down with your spouse and come up with a plan that we expect this money to come in, and if this much money comes in, this is how much money is going to go out. This is how it's going to get spent. I think those are the two things, communication and maintaining a budget.
When Christy and I were, before we got married, we were engaged and we had some premarital counseling, one of the things that the pastor, who's a really good man and good friend, he advised us was to always keep our money together. Now, I know there's different ideas about that in different houses, and you may be in marriages, second marriages or that kind of thing, but and so you've got sort of a mine and yours or his and hers kind of mentality about stuff. But one of the things that I just say as far as the communication part, I think it's really helped Christy and I, as far as our marriage goes, just knowing that we're in on everything together. And so we don't have her account and my account. It's just our money, right? It doesn't matter who brought the check in. It's just what we have. And so it makes it important for us to communicate those things. And so anyway, I think you mentioned that. I think it's been a real help for us in our relationship, just as a married couple, to know that we're together in all of this. And so I think that's good advice. Now, you talk about having a budget. I remember the first time that Christy and I really did a budget when we were in seminary. And what you do is you take your expenses for the month and you write them all down. If you don't know what they are, then this month, what would you do? If you don't know what your expenses are, what do you do?
Well, you prioritize. You know what's coming. You have to be able to.
Some people don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
Right? If you ask some people in here, like, what are your expenses this month? They go, well, I don't know. The bill will come, right?
Yeah. It'll come in the mail.
So if you're going to make a budget, like if you're just, for the first time, you're going to make a budget and you don't really know exactly what's coming in. I know this is hard for you to imagine because you're so on top of this stuff, but not everybody is. Not everybody is. So what you do is this month, right, you just say, all right, for February coming up, what we're going to do is we're going to track everything that we spend, right? Figure out exactly what we spend. So here's the power bill. It's this amount. We'll write it down. These are on the expenses line. This is what we spent in the grocery store. This is what we spent on gas. And you just keep track of everything that you bring in, right?
That's right.
All right. And so then, next month, you sort of got an idea about what you spend. So you kind of know what your budget's going to be. Now, here's the problem, right? Is that you've got your expense category and then you've got your income category. Now, when is that a problem? When
the expenses exceed the income.
All right. We want to make more than we spend, or we want to spend less than we make, right? And so that's how the budget's got to equal out. And when the first time that Christy and I really did a budget and we really wrote down what it was that we were spending, we were in seminary, both had decent jobs, didn't have any children at that time, and we went, where is all this money going? Right, we were spending money and we had nothing to show for it at all. We didn't have any. It was out to eat or buying clothes, but really there was nothing really to show for the income that we were bringing in, and we were clueless about it. We really were, and so it was really it turned the lights on for us to be able to know exactly what it is that we spend each month. And so if you've never done that, really, it is great advice that John's given you to make a budget, to really get an idea of what exactly it is that you're spending, and to see how that balances out with what it is that you bring in. Because you may find yourself a little bit every month putting a little bit more in the credit card or a little bit more here, and you just don't know exactly where it's coming from. But you need a budget to figure that out. So now, talk about putting a budget together. You got any good advice on like tools to keep up with the stuff, to track your expenses?
There's a ton of them, and I was gonna just piggyback on something you mentioned. I remember when I was younger. I was youngest of 3 boys. We lived in South Carolina, and just a little boy, I was watching my dad doing his things. My dad, to me, he was the man. My dad, he could do anything, but he'd pay the bills every month, and I would see him walk in the kitchen with a little briefcase. And he'd come in there with his little notebook, and I really didn't see what he was writing or what he was doing, but I knew he was paying all of his bills and he was tracking. He had a separate sheet for every month. Mortgage, utility, he was writing everything down that was going out. Now, he didn't write, to my knowledge, this is how much we spent going out to eat or on groceries. So that was kind of my first exposure to just seeing how people manage money. I remember when I first moved out, and my dad kind of showed that to me, so I started doing the same thing with just a steno book, and I'd write, January, whatever the year was, and mortgage, electric bill, water bill, all those things, and the check number and the amount, just to track it. As time went on, after Lynn and I got married, always spent time with her family. She's the youngest of 5, I'm the youngest of 3, so we've got all kinds of older brothers and sisters, but just speaking with them, and they would show me tools that they would use, and one of them used Quicken, computer software. And this was before cell phones and before the internet. And so I started using Quicken years ago, just a desktop software. And I've always used it and created budget and tried something different. Every year I get the new version. I'm going to try to do this inside of Quicken, and add retirement accounts and add other accounts in there and just track everything. I've kind of got a bend towards that. Now, knowing if I hadn't done anything at all up to this point and somebody said, hey, you need to start doing a budget, I would probably use a free software that's online called mint.com. And we talk about that sometimes. And my son started using that. I told him about it just because I'd heard about it. I've never used it. But he started using that, and he's doing pretty good with it as far as I could tell.
So John said he's got a bent towards these things. I mean, he enjoys the whole budget process. I mean, he likes. I mean, he makes spreadsheets and for all their expenses, like his kids' Christmas lists. I mean, he enjoys it. All right. Now I don't enjoy it that much. All right. So for me, I have to make myself do these things. I need to find ways to be more disciplined, and I need to have tools to help me. And you mentioned Mint. I've been using Mint for a long time, and it's not an advertisement for that, but it is free, and you can put in your all your banking account information, and every time you spend something, it'll show up. There's another app you can get on your phone called Every Dollar that's put out by Dave Ramsey, who has actually wrote the book that you're going to be teaching from your small group. Comes from his organization, and but what it does is just every time you swipe your card, it's going to show up on there, and you can put a category down for it, and it's really easy to track. You can put in your cash. If you spend cash, you can categorize. I spent $4 on coffee. Again, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so you can just track everything right there, and so it really makes it makes it easier for me to have those kind of tools, and helps me to do something that I really don't like to do that much. Now we talked about a couple of things that you can do that are sort of the best pieces of advice: communication, budgeting. All right, what are the biggest mistakes, or what's the biggest mistake that people make when it comes to money?
I could think of 2 things, and one we kind of touched on it already is spending money you don't have, going into debt. People get credit cards. I work for a company that processes credit cards, and sometimes I kind of feel like I'm working for the devil a little bit because I help process credit cards. But I know that's not true. But I mean, credit cards, it's the ease of the transaction, but you have to be careful. I mean, there was studies, and Dave Ramsey talks about it, that I don't know how they did it, but they would be able to measure the activity in the brain whenever somebody goes to purchase something. And if they're counting out, $200 in cash on the table, there's more activity going on in their brain. They feel it more than if they just swipe a piece of plastic. And it's also, there's a tendency to just spend more money if you have plastic. If lots of times people don't know how much money they have. They're just going to swipe the plastic. Oh, I want to get this. I want to get that. I think that's one of the biggest dangers is just not tracking your money and overspending money you don't have.
I'm so guilty. I don't even listen to what they say the total is, right? I just swipe, you know. I don't even look at what the total, if you know you're buying the thing. But it does. It hurts to lay down the cash, right? You actually have to count it out, yeah. So spending more than you make, obviously bad deal.
And I would say also just, if you're married, not communicating with your spouse. You have to be on the same page. You mentioned earlier a lot of people's going to have different opinions about combining your finances. I know when Lynn and I got married, we combined our finances, but we've always spoken together. I mean, it's not you could have a set time, you know, during the week or whenever that you sit down with your spouse and go through your finances. And it's kind of funny. I'm looking at it so much, and Lynn's got a seat right in front of me, but she's working on something else, and we'll talk about stuff, and I'll show it to her. But just the absence of that communication, just to prevent any surprises, making sure you're both on the same page. I think that's real important.
Now, one of the things that I know you're good at, and something I'm not good at, is the idea of delayed gratification. All right, that you have, you know, you put down the budget and you've got the goals out there in the future, and when you check out, you know, at the grocery store, you don't buy all the candy and the magazines, right? Those are the impulse buys, right? Mm-hmm. The things you weren't planning on, but you could have your whole grocery list and you buy everything on the list. But, you know, if you're hungry going through the store, you go, oh, we might need some ice cream too and some cookies, and, you know, those things you buy that you weren't really planning on buying, right? I just came in here for one thing, and you got $50 worth of stuff coming out of Walmart, right? The impulse buys. That's one of the things that is really a struggle for a lot of folks, is to be able to look out into the future and to have the goal out in the future as more important than the pleasure right now. And I think that speaks to so much more than just money. All right, and that comes down to your relationship with your spouse and your children, and your relationship to the things that are temptations to you, that we would be able to forsake whatever this thing is that's going to give us a little bit of pleasure now, for the greater joy that comes down the road, that my relationship would grow with my spouse, that I would be a better husband. Remember, when we started this conversation about better, we said that little changes, little things over time can end up with big, powerful results, life-changing results down the line. And that's true of money too. When you're talking about putting money in a retirement account or saving money, little bit over time eventually equals something that you could retire off of, which is hard for some of us to even imagine, right? Okay. So now for you, John, it's very practical and you're very good, but it's not just about dollars and cents. I mean, there's a spiritual component to this for you, right?
Yeah, there is. I mean, one of the verses that I've clung to ever since I was early 20s was Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you, or you'll receive everything that you need, depending on what version that you look at. But I remember I was in a singles group at church and just sharing with other people, you know, and I was thinking, I'm never going to get married one day, you know, and they told me Matthew 6:33. So I clung to that, and my focus was on what I needed to do to be the best person I could be for God. He had to get me ready for whoever it was I was going to marry. So, you know, I consistent quiet time with him every day and focusing on him, and things fell into place. But then I realized, you know, after we got married and time to find a job, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. I was going to focus on my relationship with God, do what I needed to do, and then trust him to just work everything out. Got a pretty good job. Started having kids. I had no idea what I was going to do as a dad. I didn't, you know, I got advice from people. So seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. So I focused on that. I just kept my focus on focusing on God and keeping tuned into him and allowing his word to change me and to transform me. So same thing with finances, you know, seek first the kingdom of God. And I believe what happens when you make him a priority in all areas of your life, but with finances, that there's a transformation that takes place inside your head. You're able to better handle those impulse decisions, those impulse purchases. You mentioned those, and it's real easy for me to deny myself and not buy something. but it's hard for your family and for your kids. You know, I want so much to give good things to my wife and to my kids, but, you know, you only have this much money. You know, I can't spend this much money. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, we need to have this, but this is where we have to live. So God provides everything we need. You know, I was thinking earlier just in the back that, you know, it'd be nice to have a new car, but I don't think we've ever had a new car. You know, but God provided what I needed. I drive a 16-year-old truck back and forth to work every day, and that's what I need to get back and forth to work. I don't have to have a really nice car. There's nothing wrong with nice cars, but I realize what comes with that is a price tag, and it's just more debt. So with 5 kids, and Lynn's a stay-at-home mom, and I remember hearing pastors talk about one of the main reasons people get divorces is money trouble. Mm-hmm. And I was determined that as a husband, as a father, as the spiritual leader of our home, it was on me to make sure that I could be everything I could be to keep our marriage together, to keep our family together. So I was so convicted about that. I was determined that we're not going to struggle with this money thing. I'm going to stay on top of it. So that's a little bit about my story, I guess.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, and this is personal and prying, but you know, we talk about finances and spiritual part. You know, people in church wonder about, you know, when the buckets are passed and are given, and maybe it's not to a specific church, but given. I know when we teach our boys about money, we tell them there's 3 things that you do with your money: you give, you save, and you spend, right? Mm-hmm. And we believe it's important to make sure that you're being generous and that you're giving of your money and giving back to the Lord. Is giving a part of your I mean, you know, there's only so much money in the budget, right? I mean, right. You know, you gotta do these things. Is giving a part of y'all's, you know, life together?
It is. And I talked about this with my wife a little bit. She has a tendency to tell me I ramble too much, and I try not to. And, you know, I don't want to. But I was convicted. I knew that, you know, if this is how much money I made, then God could provide enough for me to get by on this. So essentially giving back God 10%. And when Lynn and I were dating and we were getting ready to get married, we talked about money, and we just said, we're going to tithe. I said, there's no option about it. We're going to figure out a way to give God 10% and live on 90% no matter what. And so we sat down and we did it. We came up with a budget. We came up with a plan. And I said, we could live on this, but it sure would be nice to do this and this and this, but we don't feel like that's what God wanted us to do. So, and things have, if somebody told me 25 years ago what my life would be like now, you know, being consistent tithing, I couldn't have comprehended it. I couldn't have put it together. But, I mean, we're not rich, you know, but you mentioned, you know, nobody's going to ever think they're rich, because no matter how much money you have, you always feel like you could have a little bit more. You know, I could think of times in my life, if I was here, I'd be okay. Well, I got there, and all I kept thinking about was the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's the natural human tendency. That's why I also think if you're close to God, it'll help you keep a rein on that human tendency. So, but yeah, we've tithed ever since we were married, and we've continued to do that. So.
You said important thing is communication. If you give to the church, we also think it's important that we communicate with you about what we do with the money here. Want to be real transparent and open about that. John's very involved in what happens with the money here at the church. So what we thought we'd do is, John, could you just give us a real quick snapshot of 2015 and the money here at the church for those folks that are, you know, regular givers here to the church?
Yeah, we could do that. I had a couple of slides, but the year started out with, that's our bank balance right there. At the beginning of 2015, we had right around $17,000 in the bank, which was pretty good, pretty healthy. And then as the year came on, different money came in. We had our offerings. When we made the budget for 2015, it was made an assumption that we would receive, on average, $4,500 per week. Some weeks we hit that, some weeks we don't. You know, it would fluctuate all year long. But by the time the end of 2015 was here, our average was $4,600. You know, it was up and down. It was good. We have lease income there, which, you know, we got the property on Highway 165 that we're leasing to the Potter's House. The Serenity Group meets here twice a week. They give us a little bit of money each month. First Church, I mentioned up there, they was a substantial deposit that came from them in 2015 that we weren't expecting. It really helped us out a lot. And then just other miscellaneous deposits. But during the year also, where the money went, we had substantial remodel work done. Some of you may remember, but the stage, we backed the stage up. We made more rows in here. This, what we were calling the overflow room, which is now the hub, we kind of remodeled that, and it is what it is today. There's downstairs to the house over here, most recent renovation for the kids to meet in down there. It looks really good. There's other remodel stuff we're thinking about. There's a new heat and air unit that was purchased for this building in 2015. Hasn't been installed yet, but it's going to be installed in the next few weeks.
Yeah, just going to jump in. I mean, there's in this last year, there's been really incredible things done with the monies that have been brought in. You know, the things that you can see, and I'm going to steal some of John's thunder here, but the Easter at the River Center was a big expense. It was an awesome thing to do. We actually have some debt because even with the monies that were brought in, we didn't have enough to cover some of the renovations here that we took on here, and so how much debt do we have now?
Right now?
Right now.
It's probably about $66,000 in debt.
Do you remember what it was at the beginning of the year?
It was about $96,000.
All right, so that's a pretty big hunk to pay off. That's because John hates debt, all right? It's a big deal. And so he's encouraged us to really go after getting rid of that debt, because that money that we pay to the bank is money that we can't use here for ministry, all right? And so he's been really going after that. So in the last year, money that outside of really what we kind of budgeted, I mean, it's close to like $50,000 of extra expenses, things that have gone on here. You've gotten a lot for your money in 2015. It's pretty amazing. It's an incredible blessing from God. And here's the really good news: is after all of that, how are we right now?
Well, we're doing good with what we started at the beginning of the year, and the money that came in and the money that went out. The ending balance at the end of December, it's right. It should be right around $35,000 whenever that other slide pops up there, but there it is. So, and if somebody had told me at this time last year that you guys are gonna remodel all this stuff, you're gonna be able to pay down about $25,000 more on the loan, you have this incredible Easter service, get a new pastor, and all this renovation work done and things in the children's area, and you're going to end up with double what you had in the checking account, I wouldn't have believed it. Yeah. But it worked out.
God's good. God really is good. Now, you may look at that and you may think, $30,000, woo, you guys are rolling in it, right? That really only amounts to, if with our budget, it really only amounts to about 6 weeks of expenses. And so you have a couple of emergencies that happen in there. One of the things we want to make sure, if some emergency happens, we want to make sure we're taking care of our staff, we're taking care of our people, and keeping the building up and going. And so really $30,000 is just about 6 weeks of expenses. And boy, we want to kill that debt, don't we?
That's
I mean,
right.
we want to get rid of that thing. Here's the deal. Here's the deal. It's just like your budget at the house, all right? What comes in, all right, we can only spend what comes in. We can't spend more than we bring in tithes and offerings. And our goal here is to do everything that we can to reach the lost, right? The Fort is an incredible place. It's an incredible place that the community knows that no matter who you are, or no matter what kind of person you are, or what's happened in your background, that the Fort can be a refuge, can be a safe place for you to come and to find and meet Jesus and to experience life change. And that happens in all sorts of ways, through our ministries, through children's ministries, and all this stuff, this equipment, all this, it's all ultimately is money, right? I mean, it takes money to do this stuff. And because of your generosity, because of your commitment to be a part of what's happening here at the Fort, through your giving, we're able to do that. Now, what we want is we want to do more, right? I mean, we just want to we want to continue to reach more people and to do more and exciting things. And so, encourage you, if you've never been a regular giver, this is the part where you go, here it goes, he wants my money, right? But really, hear John, and you may not trust me because I'm the one asking for the money, but hear John and other people. It changes how you view money. It changes how you view what's enough, what you need. And you don't have to give here, right? You give something, but you need to have giving as a part of what you do spiritually. Jesus showed us sacrificial love, right? And we need to be sacrificial in the way that we give. And so I just encourage you, 2 Corinthians 9 says, each one of you decide in your own heart how much you give. Don't give reluctantly or in response to pressure, for God loves a person who gives cheerfully. God loves a person who gives cheerfully. God changes our hearts about these things. I tell you, I'm so thankful for guys like John who've been faithful over years, who are good examples, who are father figures to look up. Big brother, it's insulting to call you father figure, right? Big brother figures to look up to and to follow their example. John, thank you so much for sharing this morning. Y'all give John a hand. Thanks, bud. Appreciate it. In Philippians, Paul, who's been through so much, he's been taken from what he knew as what was going to be his life goal. God just changed it all around and had him serve him, had him go all over the known world to serve him. He was in shipwrecks, he was imprisoned, he was beaten, they tried to kill him at times and he survived. He'd been through all this stuff, and in Philippians he's writing, and he keeps writing the same message: rejoice, 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 over and over again in Philippians. And then there's this verse in chapter 4 that many of you are familiar with. It's the favorite verse of sports people, right? And if you played sports and everybody had, what's your favorite Bible verse? Or Tim Tebow put it on his eye black. It's what? Do you know? Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But here's the verses that come right before that, all right? Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content with whatever I have. Now here, this is a guy who's been here, he's been here. He's been all up and down, all along the spectrum of having and not having. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or little. And what's the secret? I do it through Christ. My next step I take in the power of Jesus Christ. Whatever happens tomorrow, we do in the power of Jesus Christ. And I can do whatever it is because he's with me, right? Let's pray together.